Welcome to the Occidental Center for the Arts virtual literary series. We're so glad you're here for this momentous occasion, a celebration of our town itself and its illustrious history through the recently published book, Occidental. As you can see, we're at the famous Union Hotel this afternoon. The Union's proprietor, Barbara Gonnella, and educator Mary Pozzi worked with author Bob Dougherty and local historians to create this book, A History of Occidental. Many unpublished photographs are drawn from the Gonnella and other private collections as a tribute to the pioneers of this unique community. As a child, Barbara grew up playing on the historic Coleman Valley Schoolhouse Ranch. Her great-grandfather, Innocente Ilia, purchased the schoolhouse property in 1892 and ran it as a dairy ranch. Barbara's affection for school and sport inspired her to study at Sonoma State University, followed by a teaching credential from Dominican College. On her summer breaks, she taught swimming at Ives Pool in Sebastopol. Lucille and Marge Gonnella were two of her favorite water aerobics students. Soon Frank Gonnella was taking lessons too. Barbara and Frank wed in 1984 and dedicated themselves to running the Union Hotel while celebrating the birth of their daughter, Jen. A thread of history weaves beautifully through Barbara's family heritage and the hamlet of Occidental, and she has a treasure trove of stories, as we will hear today. Barbara has been a steady and enthusiastic supporter of our center since its inception, inspired by two other towns' matriarchs, Doris Murphy and Kit Neustadter. We're honored to host today's event and thank Barbara for her continuing encouragement of our center for more than a decade. Before we even had our center at Harmony Village, we often held our events in the Bocce Ballroom, and she was our generous host. We're thrilled to be able to reciprocate today. This afternoon, Barbara will be joined by iconic and beloved Sonoma County historian Gay LeBaron. Gay is a native Californian and a 69-year resident of Sonoma County. The list of Gay's contributions to Sonoma County's history is extensive. She wrote her first column for the Press Democrat in 1959 and was the daily columnist until her retirement in 2001. She continues to contribute an historical perspective column twice monthly. She's the author, with three other researchers, of a 2-volume local history of Santa Rosa. She lectured for 35 years on Sonoma County history at SRJC's Community Education Program and continues to be an honored lecturer through Sonoma State University's Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. Today, Barbara will share a slideshow of her favorite photographs with commentary on key points in Occidental's evolutionary history. And she and Gay will join in conversation with rousing memories of our town's unique community.
Welcome, and our thank you to Occidental Center for the Arts for hosting this virtual book tour of our book, Occidental. We thank all of you that are joining us from your home or your garden on this virtual afternoon to share the history of Occidental. For those of you, when life opens up, we welcome you to come by the Union and take a peek at our book and have a complimentary bruschetta from the Gonnella family. I'm honored to be sitting in this historic Union Hotel ballroom with the legendary Gay LeBaron to just take a historical journey of Occidental from both of a little conversation about history from the two of us. Gay's beloved husband, John, has many memories of coming to Occidental, so I would love for her to share some of his writings.
Well, I'd be glad to. I'd be very glad to, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be here, and thank you for your work in putting out what I think is a fine book. You're welcome. This is from John's memoir, which is just for the family, that he was writing when he died. He didn't get to the end, but I mean, he didn't get past midlife, but he did a lot with his early years, and he grew up in Valley Ford. His father was a banker there. And he wrote, sometimes my parents, along with their friends, the Continis, would meet the Furlongs, some or all of them, at the Union Hotel in Occidental for dinner, usually on a Friday night. The Union Hotel was great in those days. I remember Mary and Carling Panazera, the mountains of food and the merry camaraderie of those times. When I was small and got out of hand, sometimes my parents had to chase me around under the tables at the big dining room. At other times, maybe in the 1936 or 38, when I was a little older, and especially when there were important boxing matches, Mary would give us a little dining room behind the bar and would bring in a radio. I remember hearing the static-laden broadcasts of Joe Louis and Max Schmeling, as well as Louis and Tommy Farr from far off Madison Square Garden. My father and the other guys in the group hooped and cheered, participating in the glory days of boxing. I was still too young to really appreciate this carefree and excitement-laden gathering of family and friends, but I can look back on them now with a certain sense of nostalgia and maybe a little pride at having been there. We don't get to Occidental as often as we once did, but walking into the bar at the Union Hotel is still like going back to my childhood. The food is still great and the setting is just like I remember it from my sub-teen years. To a certain extent, we've carried on the Union tradition in our family. I've chased both my son and grandson around the big dining room, and in my mind I can sometimes hear the clang of the gong and the ring announcer's voice. I always feel the absence of my parents, the Continis, the Furlongs, and Mary and her big welcoming smile.
Jay, that went straight to my heart. So many stories like John's have inspired the book. The guests that wander in through these halls and they share with me, they had their first Shirley Temple here. They remember the platters of apple and banana fritters. They fell in love here, and they just journey back to live those remembrances.
We always had some of the little wine glasses, the little short wine glasses, and we always referred to them as Occidental wine glasses.
I love it. I may have a few of those upstairs for you. My sister Mary Pozzi and an educator and our dear friend, author Bob Dougherty, and I were so grateful, and we were delighted to be able to write the book about the history of Occidental upstairs in the 1879 setting. And it was amazing to just be in if only the walls were embracing the story, and it was just magical. Probably one of the greatest inspirations for the book, along with memories like John's, were the fact that our ancestors had the courage to immigrate to Occidental. The Elias and the Pozzis, our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, the Gonnellas and the Panazeras all came to Occidental from Italy. My great-grandfather, Innocenti Elia, came over in 1892 and bought the Coman Valley Ranch. His brother, Italy was depressed, his brother, Martin Elia, fled to Argentina, and Martin's son, Arturo, became president of Argentina. It's amazing. It's like last week we had a group from Argentina dining at the Union, and they bought a book. They were so amazed that there was a connection to their beloved Arturo. Frank's grandfather purchased the Union Hotel in 1925, and here we are, still celebrating the goodness of this magical spot. And I'm forever grateful to Mary Panazera and Carlo Panazera and Lucille for preserving so many letters, telegrams, newspaper clippings, and especially photographs, which allowed for us to write this story. Some of the most beloved articles are Dear Gay LeBaron's. We have the original cutouts that were preserved by Mary and Carlo and Lucille, your writings. So well, thank you, Gay.
That's flattering. Thank you.
Since the inception of Occidental in 1876, the town has been affected by many catastrophic events, including family tragedies, the Great San Francisco Earthquake of 1906, the fires of 1899, 1906, 1924, and the pandemic of 1918 and 2020. But after each of these events, the town is always united to rebuild and strengthen its community. Some of the earliest settlers migrated across pre-industrial America in covered wagons. On the wagon, the words were written, "The Lord be blessed, we're here." This 1904 photograph shows the Beadle family, the Blaney family, the Rogers family, and the Ben Bryans family. Boss Meeker and Dutch Bill Howard, who was really Danish, were two of the earliest settlers in Occidental that really shaped the town. Howard was a land baron, and he sold the land that we're sitting in right now to Amelia Jones in 1879 for $150. Amelia built the Union Saloon and the kitchen behind it and the boarding house above. She then sold it back to Howard a year later in the amount of $1,000. Howard then sold the property to the Dougherty family in 1891. The Doughertys ran the boarding house for years until they eventually sold it to Carlo Panazera in 1925. In 1892, my great-grandfather, Innocenti Elia, immigrated from Italy to Occidental and purchased the Coman Valley School Ranch. His brother, Martin Elia, fled to Argentina, and Martin's son, Arturo, became president of Argentina. My grandmother, Hilda Elia, is pictured here in front of St. Philip's the Apostle Church in 1917, receiving her first Holy Confirmation. Waiting for the Passing Train, 1889. This picture is taken from the end of Coman Valley Road, facing east. The original Altamont Hotel can be seen on the left, and WWII General Store is on the right. Brown's Wooden Truss Bridge, located a half a mile south of Occidental, was built in 1876 by the North Pacific Coast Railroad. The tracks were 137 feet above the stream bed and spanned 300 feet. The original bridge had a single post in the middle called the Cluster Pier and was the country's tallest timber bridge.
You know, there's a lot of very good information accompanying the great photos in that book, and you should be complimented on it. And the names, I just love hearing the names, you know, reading them off, like Gonnella, Panazera, Pozzi, Ilia, Lombardi, Morelli, Negri, Fiori, Facendini. I love Facendini. It's like following a road map through Tuscany. If they had mailboxes, that's what you'd be seeing.
Panazera Meat Company, 1920. The Panazera Meat Company was started by Italian immigrants Custon and Margaret Panazera in 1914. Later, their son Joe worked the butcher shop while his wife Anna, Gonnella Panazera, ran the market. In 1971, Joe sold the business to his son Bob, who expanded his grandfather's famous sausage production throughout Sonoma County. The Heart of the Union, 1942. Shown are some of the dedicated women who have served generations of family, especially old-time San Franciscans. The recipes of the handcrafted ravioli and tortas are over 100 years old. Fiore Kitchen, 1950. Ray Fiore ran the restaurant kitchen, but the whole family was involved in ensuring a smooth operation. Press Democrat columnist Gayla Barron wrote, "There was a continuous fritter debate in the early days. Mary's zucchini fritters were hands down in the vegetable department, but Raymond Fiore's apple fritters may have edged the Union banana variety."
Generations have eaten at our Occidental restaurants, and many have written about their memorable experiences, including our friend and writer-artist Mary Lou Downing, who will regale us with an excerpt from her book, Tales from the West Pole, of the day she and her family discovered the Union and had their first memorable feast of many.
It takes a few minutes for my eyes to adjust to the dark of the high-ceilinged Union Hotel, built as a sign outside proudly proclaims in 1879. The long, dimly lit dining halls are filled with tables covered in red checkered cloths, and the walls are hung with fading photographs of the Italian founders, the Gonnellas and the Panazeras. There they are, my husband Scott says, running over to give friend Will a hug. We introduce all around. Sandra, with her head of long curly hair, takes wiggly Mary Leah while Grace and I head to the bathroom. The bathroom is filled with freshly cut stems of lavender, a clever natural deodorizer. When we come back, everyone sits at a long wooden table with friendly stranger in traditional Italian family-style dining. It feels like some of our favorite places on Columbus Street in San Francisco's North Beach. We proceed to eat the largest dinner of our lives. Antipasto of kidney beans and salami, mozzarella and peppers, followed by salad, a big pot of minestrone soup, bread, followed by hand-made ravioli, spaghetti, baked chicken, and Gracie's favorite, a dessert of apple fritters dusted with sugar and cinnamon. We groan and take our bagged-up leftovers into the saloon with the old hand-carved wooden bar, colorful bottles gleaming in the smoky, hazy light. It's almost dark out now, but we aren't ready to leave the feel-good of this place. The hotel seems ripe for love. Even the menu describes how love blossomed when waitress Mary Alberigi fell down the stairs from the second floor and was swooped into the arms of the hotel owner, Carlo Panazera. They married shortly afterwards, starting a dynasty of Italian restaurateurs. We're warmed by the glow of the place as we sit listening to accordion music. The bartender tells us the blind accordion player, Emile Bordi, is almost 90 years old. Grace makes friends with some other kids, and they all dance around to jumpy music. I feel a tug, a yearning, an immediate kinship with this town, with its unspoiled Italian atmosphere, its casual, friendly environment. I'm crying a little. What's wrong, Will asks. I want to live here. This is the place for me, I say, turning to Scott. A funny look crosses my husband's face. What? You want to leave Mill Valley? We just moved there. You thought that was your place. I know, but now I'm in love, I say. Grace wraps her arms around me. Don't cry, Mommy. I'm fine, I say. I'm not really sad. And it's true, sometimes love is that way. Like crying at weddings, some part of you has been touched, some sentimental button pushed. It's that moment when you realize there's no turning away from love, and you're not even sure you want to be in love. We say goodbye and drive back to Mill Valley. That night, in my dream, towering trees cast shadows. In the distance, owls hoot, calling to each other. Entering the forest, I feel the soft, uneven redwood duck beneath my bare feet. I look at the dream compass. The dial points west, to the Occident, to the West Pole. Thank you.
we could have a conversation about every chapter in the book.
Exactly.
We talked, one of the most symbolic chapters is the Patriots. 62 young boys, almost all of the young boys in town at the time of World War II served. And all came home but two, one of which was Eugene Vaccarezza. And Eugene's Purple Heart is displayed proudly at the Union Hotel. And there's a book about his life that is also available just because so many people wander in and want to know his story. One way that new immigrants showed their patriotism was by displaying the U.S. flag. 17 flags are visible here. This photograph was likely taken in the second Altamont Hotel. The Boys from Occidental, 1946. Eleanor Travellini said she took this photograph of local soldiers on a day that had a parade and a barbecue. From left to right are Lee Thompson, Earl Beadle, Dominic Travellini, Ned Fiore, and Joe Lenardi. Out of the 62 Occidental veterans who served in World War II, 2 never returned. Eugene Vaccarezza served in the U.S. Marine Corps, and he remains one of the 514 soldiers missing in action from the 1943 Battle of Tarawa in the Pacific Theater, considered the toughest battle in the Marine Corps history. Also, a chapter about so many families depended on making their greens. They all had their signature wreaths and garlands that they produced in their barns and their basements, and the income from that carried them through the winter. Days were lean, and so they started in early November, cutting second growth brush in the woods, and they all created their own, they were artists in their own way, with the greens, the wreaths and the garlands that were just sent around the country.
And you can't forget the Christmas tree from the city of Paris, Christmas tree that went down every year from here. And I'm sure by the middle of November they had already scouted out which tree was going and what a chore that was. And of course it went up through the rotunda and you could walk up and look at each level. It was incredible.
The
We
city
all
of Paris.
knew it came from us.
And we just all dressed up and fancied up to go down to San Francisco and gaze at that beautiful fir tree that Alfonso Vaccarezza would transport into San Francisco. They would close before the Golden Gate Bridge. They would ship it over from Sausalito on the ferry, and then they would close part of Geary Street as they transported the famous tree into San Francisco. And the Vaccarezza family would always get a few toys off of that tree, some really treasured historical dolls. Yes. Wreaths and garlands were made from second growth suckers cut from around redwood stumps. Shown is Alfonso Vaccarezza, ready to deliver a truckload of wreaths. From 1850 to 1972, the City of Paris Dry Goods Company was a San Francisco institution. In 1953, the San Francisco Chronicle reported, for the past 48 years, Alfonso Vaccarezza, a woodsman from Occidental, has selected the Douglas fir for the City of Paris. The police stopped traffic on Geary Street while the tree, sheathed in burlap, made its grand entrance into the city of Paris.
The lush forest surrounding Occidental provides a natural connection to the lumber industry and, of course, Christmas trees, garlands, and wreaths. But generations of Union Hotel restaurant guests also know of their extensive Easter Bunny collection. Normally spread throughout the dining areas and bakery, but this year, due to the COVID pandemic, the famous bunny collection is gathered in the Bocce Ballroom, providing us with a unique opportunity to photograph the group all together.
Let's talk about food a little. I mean,
I love talking about food.
We're here. Mike Pardee, who was a Press Democrat writer through the first half of the 1900s, from probably 1907 to late 50s, once opened a feature about Occidental's restaurants by suggesting that the town was built on a pool of pasta sauce. And I've never really heard anybody deny it, actually, including you. And before we go on, we talk about Mary. Let's talk a little bit about Lucille too, because you know she was Mary's daughter, and she was Mary's opposite. As so often happens in families, she was shy. Mary wasn't shy. Mary was out there and bold. And what Lucille did for her whole life, being the hostess that her mother had been, and being the strong woman, was, I think, a whole lot more difficult for Lucille than it had been for Mary. And I think that she deserves a great deal of credit.
In 1930, as wood-burning stoves and fireplaces warmed the redwood walls of the Union Hotel, a beautiful baby girl named Lucille was born to Carlo and Mary Panazera. Lucille grew up playing in the old hotel, where the scents and flavors of bay, rosemary, and garlic linger to this day. Lucille's mother, Mary Panazera, put her heart and soul into the Union Hotel. She donned a white apron fancied with a string of pearls. Local hunters and fishermen loved to bring their catch into her kitchen. She cooked eel, venison, cioppino, and ravioli. Often there were several priests seated at her bountiful table. Mary was known for running the hotel with a silk glove over an iron fist. Sadly, Mary and Carlo died in the 1970s. Lucille's quiet strength was instrumental in stewarding the Union Hotel. She gracefully assumed the reins while mourning her mother. Her steadfast presence allowed for traditions to continue. Making torta for the first time without her mother caused tears to stream down her face. Tears of sorrow and tears of frustration as the rendering lard burned. Mary Panazera's worn red leather-bound cookbook describes handfuls of this and pinches of that. Lucille added a bottle of Grand Marnier to that list of torta ingredients. To this day, music is celebrated at the Occidental Union Hotel. Fourth generation Gonnella, Jen Gonnella, is often found playing her grand piano late into the evening in the Bocce Ballroom. So it's a beloved town. It did survive within the 60s it became more diverse, but I just love that families always come together in Occidental. You can walk into the restaurant and there are the ranchers, the winemakers, you know what I mean, the counterculture.
There was a time there were the hippies.
There was a time there were the hippies, but now it's a very bohemian, it's a very artistic community that
I think it's remarkable. I really do.
And we're grateful for the Center for the Arts for embracing a lot of the local art. So we're honored to participate with you.
It's a mixed bag. Mary Lou Downing sent a question among some of the others that says, you know, does it seem like all the groups who were once not friendly, like the hippies and the old farmers, have now come to accept one another? And I think that's a good question, and it raises a good point. From what I've seen, and I'm not the expert, you are, I would say it's true.
Absolutely, and I mourn, you know, I love Bill Wheeler, the Wheeler Ranch. It's like Bill was in here all the time and just played golf with Frank, and I have one of his original pieces of art, and it's sad. We miss him, and we love his daughters and his family and the next generation. They all stop in.
I did a video with Bill, and he was very, very forthcoming about the whole adventure.
Yes, yeah.
So, what do you think, Barbara, about the Occidental mystique kicking in and making it possible for all these people to come together? You think there's some kind of something in the air?
I do. You know, I feel like I have been told that the Bohemian Highway from Freestone to Cazadero is some of the most pure oxygen in the world. I know, really, and I believe we're so blessed to live in this exquisite setting, to be surrounded by lovely, lovely people and wonderful cuisine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have loved being here. I'm very much appreciate your book, and have many fond memories. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Deb. It's an honor to be with you.